Coming to Krishna Consciousness was, there's no real, you can't really give any reason how you came, because it's just a miracle that Srila Prabhupada came to the Western world and somehow he made it available to us. There's different stories, different kinds of reasons why people come externally. So I was a little materially finished and searching. And you're just thinking, there was a popular song out at the time that said, I can't get any satisfaction. I can't get no satisfaction. And that was basically what I was thinking by the end of my teens. It just seemed that there was no way of finding out what life was for. My parents were Jewish. Their spiritual life was really, belonging to a particular race, belonging to a particular social thing, but that didn't make sense. So anyway, somehow or another, I was reading books, reading all kinds of nonsense philosophy that was getting me nowhere. And then I think a lot of my friends were also searching. In the 60s, it was a time when people were getting very fed up with the status quo. So sometimes we'd listen to all kinds of music, sometimes get up in the morning and chant Om, because we were attracted to Eastern things. It was very attractive. Sometimes people think hippies were just people who were just, completely out of it all the time. But a lot of people were just searching for the truth, and we couldn't find it. There was nobody who could give you any answers. So, that meant you're going here, going there, reading this, reading that, associating with all kinds of people, thinking you could find an answer. So, when I was 21, I had a fairly decent job at the BBC in London, which was also really boring. I remember I used to go in the ladies and read a yoga book, and you knew something was coming from the East, but you didn't know what. And there were no answers. And there was a place in London called the Macrobiotic Restaurant. And it was a place people used to go to find out about alternative spirituality. And the devotees used to go there. I think it was on a Tuesday night. And I think I served them some water or something. I used to go after work, sometimes there, just to meet people who were searching for spirituality. Anyway, I saw them and I was attracted to them, but I was a bit too shy to ask. You didn't want to just go up and say, where do you live, what do you do, who are you? So I didn't, and that was my great misfortune. I didn't see them again. That was in 1969, so I never met devotees again till 1971. That was actually at a time when Prabhupada was staying in John Lennon's estate, and the devotees were looking around the area of that restaurant for a temple, the first London temple. So I wish I had spoken to them then. So from that, I learned, that when Krishna gives you a chance, you shouldn't always be shy. Prabhupada said you shouldn't be shy about prasadam or association, So then, a couple of years later, I'm out in the country with these friends, and as usual, bored. And then I found there was a book that was very popular in those days. It was called Be Here Now, and it was written by an American young man, who had been to India, and it was telling his whole story, how he met his guru, which was Neem Karoli Baba, I think. Anyway, I was reading this book, and in it he said, if you want to find a spiritual teacher, you should meditate on him sitting on a lotus just above the level of your eyes and pray to him to come to you. So I did that. Then about a week later, a friend of mine was going to live in Israel. So I went to London with him to just see him off and say goodbye. And I'd said that prayer, and my friend went off, and in those days a lot of us used to hitchhike, you know, just grab a lift off someone. So I got a lift. A man stopped the car in a big Bentley, which was a very posh car, and he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to Manchester, where I came from." And he said, "Oh, I'll take you there, but I just have to go somewhere else first." And the place he said he had to go first was actually a very rough place. And we were driving along, and then we just went past that restaurant where I'd seen the devotees. So I looked across the road, because it was somewhere familiar. And who did I see walking down the road but a devotee in robes? And you know who it was? It was Shamsundar Prabhu. And I looked at this man who was driving the car. He had a big moustache and a red face. And suddenly Krishna saved me. I tell you, he intervened with my whole life. I just said, "Oh." And the car stopped at the traffic lights. I said, "Oh, I've just seen a friend. I don't think I'll go back to Manchester right now." And I jumped out of the car and I ran over the road, and it was Shamsundar. And you know, Shamsundar is such a compassionate and broad-minded person. Anyone else would have probably thought, "Who's this lunatic girl coming up to me in the middle of nowhere?" And I just said, "Please, could you take me to the temple? I've always wanted to go." So he took me. He took me to the temple. And they said, "Oh, you have to visit for a week if you want to stay here." So I said, "Well, I can't visit for a week because I live in Manchester." And I actually told a lie. I said, "I don't know anyone in London." I did know people in London. So the temple president was Dayananda. He's also a broad-minded and very kind person. But he said, he had told me I couldn't stay. And then he went upstairs, and I had Mahaprasadam. And then he came down again and he said, "Okay, you can stay." So I moved in. I moved in the temple, and that was it. I just knew that was immediately, you know, that I'd come home. I have to say my consciousness was not clear. I was really aware that I was very covered. And every day when I woke up, I was thinking, "Oh, if only I could be more clear like these people here," you know. And Srila Prabhupada was there at the temple. I couldn't really perceive him very well. I was really covered. And then after a few days, Srila Prabhupada was leaving and going to Africa. So I went with all the devotees in the van to see Prabhupada off at the airport, like everyone did. And then on the way to the airport, I realized I may never see this person again. And my god sister was there, Mondakini. She's a wonderful devotee. The devotees were crying because Prabhupada was going. And suddenly I realized, I think really, even though I wasn't clear, still somehow I got Prabhupada's association just by being in his presence. You know, because one moment's association with a pure devotee, you're relieved of lifetimes of sinful activity, and somehow my desire came up that I have to see him again, I have to see him again. So when we got back from the airport, I sat down and I copied out Prabhupada's, Nama prayers. I wrote it very neatly as I could, and very clearly, and I wrote all the diacritical marks. Fortunately, I was quite good at spelling and things like that, so I did it right. And a little while later, I got a letter back from Srila Prabhupada. My name was Carol, and he put my dear Carol, and he thanked me for my letter, and he said it's nicely written and correctly spelled, which shows you're a very intelligent girl. Very kind. And he said, you can use your talent and intelligence in Krishna's service. Then he said, young boys and girls are often agitated in mind or disturbed in mind, but simply by chanting this Hare Krishna mantra, everything will be okay. So still haven't discovered my talent and intelligence, I don't think, but it was encouraging, it was so encouraging. I was brand new. And so that was the first time I met Prabhupada, and how he immediately reciprocated. He answered people's letters. He was so personal. And the next time I saw him was in Scotland. In those days we'd only been devotees a few months, and we'd have to go and help, if we wanted to open a new centre. And Prabhupada loved Scotland because he was brought up by Scottish teachers. So he came there, and I saw him there, and I wrote him a letter there, and then he wrote on the back of the letter, in his own writing, may Krishna give you, thank you very much for your kind sentiments. May Krishna give you all blessings. So I still have that. So, Prabhupada's mercy. So the next time I saw Srila Prabhupada after he went to Africa and I had his letter was when he came back through London. And my first service was buying flowers for the deities. It's still my favourite service. So I made a banner hanging up outside the temple, which was near the British Museum in Berry Place. I made a banner with flowers saying, Jai Srila Prabhupada, and he looked up and he saw it. So we saw Prabhupada. His room was right next to the ladies' rooms, the ladies' ashram, which is a very small room. So we'd sit outside just to hope we'd see Prabhupada, but he was using our bathroom. We had to share the bathroom with the men upstairs. So we were sitting there, we were so naive and innocent really. We were sitting there waiting for him to go to the bathroom so we could catch a glimpse of him. So he'd come out in his gumsha and we'd pay our obeisances. He was so kind, like a father. He wasn't kind of saying, why are you sitting there? This isn't proper. He never did that. He just treated us like his daughters. It was Lord Chaitanya's army, but it wasn't like being in an ordinary army where you had to, always getting corrected and told what you were doing wrong and what you should be doing. Because Prabhupada had a way of encouraging everyone, whatever you could do. He was expert at engaging people. And it wasn't about doing things, it was about engaging. There's a big difference between just doing service because you're supposed to do service, and being engaged. And Prabhupada, when he looked at you, you felt totally purified, and everything you were worried about or afraid of just fell away. And he just infinitely encouraging. So he came through every year. Usually when he was traveling, he'd always stop in England. So I don't remember any specifics, except I can't remember the year I got Gayatri. It's probably 72. I got it at the Rath Yatra in Trafalgar Square, under the big columns. We had a fire yagya on the, on that, piece of English heritage. We had a fire yagya. We got our Gayatri there. And then later we went to Prabhupada's room to get the mantra. So I went in his room, and also that was another thing. We weren't expected to give dakshin, like money or anything like that. Whatever you were moved to give. I bought him some nice roses. They were a little bit scented. I remember those roses were called Sonia, the nice roses. And so I took those in, and then we had to repeat the mantra. And I was a bit puffed up because I was good at learning sloka in those days. So Prabhupada said the line, and I repeated it. And then I guess I made a mistake at some point, and he said, "Look at the paper." But he didn't tell me off. So I saw him then in 72. And we heard him giving classes. The first thing that really impacted me when I first joined in 71 were the classes. Prabhupada wasn't there then, but the Bhagavatam, it was just incredible. Everything, it was as if you were waking up from a long sleep. It didn't feel like Prabhupada said, Krishna Consciousness isn't an artificial imposition on the mind. It's like you were waking up from something you'd always known. And then when Prabhupada was there, we were all in the class, you know. And actually, in those days, everybody sat jumbled up. There weren't men at the front, women at the back. We were like a young family with the father. And we were just all sitting together. Even in kirtan, sometimes I played the harmonium and led the evening arti, and we were all jumping up and down, and we're just brothers and sisters. It was the early days, and we were naive, we were quite innocent. So then in 73 was the year that Prabhupada danced all the way from Marble Arch to Trafalgar Square, and I didn't go to that Rath Yatra because someone had to stay back and look after the deities, and I think I was a bit lazy. I don't think I was being noble. I think I was a bit lazy. And anyway, I stayed back, and I'm in the temple room with the deities, and then Prabhupada came back early from Rath Yatra, and he came back with Shamsundar. And Shamsundar went down to the kitchen to get Prabhupada a drink. And Prabhupada came in and he went to see Radhalanishvara, who are his favorite deities. There's a competition. and I'd always wanted to, obviously everybody thought they'd like to touch Prabhupada's feet, but we never did. Never touched his feet. And I still don't like touching his feet on the Vyasasana, because we never used to touch his feet. And but he came in and his slippers were in the doorway, and then Shamsundar hadn't come back yet, so Prabhupada went to put his slippers on, so I got to put his slippers on. So I did get his lotus feet on my hands, putting the slippers on, but my hands felt so rough and horrible for Prabhupada's feet that I reckon it's just mercy that you somehow. Prabhupada once said, "Don't be surprised who goes, be surprised who stays." And sometimes you just think it's just pure mercy. Devotees are very respectful sometimes, and they overdo it. They think that because we're still here, that maybe we came down in a flower aeroplane or something, but we didn't. We were fallen souls, and it was just Prabhupada's mercy that we're still here. So since 70, Prabhupada came every year, but I better get on because I saw Prabhupada most in Bombay. So beginning of 75, Prabhupada wanted devotees from Australia and England to come to Bombay. We called it Bombay then, and because we didn't need visas. So I came beginning of 75 with some other devotees. Kaushalya, she was more experienced than me. She was in the first lot of devotees that came with Prabhupada to Surat, that glorious Hare Nam. And she was a good cook and she could sing, and Prabhupada often would ask her to sing at programs. He'd often ask the ladies to sing, even when the sannyasis were present, Kaushalya and Yamuna, the Bombay Pandal, all these big programs. Prabhupada didn't discriminate at all. He treated us all equally, just like Krishna. So, yeah, when I came here, the flats were still on the land where the local people lived. So I lived, first of all, in one place that was, well, you could see at night, before going to sleep, you could see Prabhupada's window up on the top floor in the building along the edge of the property at the back. And could see Prabhupada's light on in the evening and know he was translating. And then when you wake up in the morning, you look out of the window again and see Prabhupada's light on. And you know he's still translating those books for us. So I saw Prabhupada the most here in Bombay. And it was incredible because he was here so often. And he was so accessible. It wasn't like you had to queue up or you had to wait until you got a chance, and that only more older devotees than you or sannyasis or more advanced devotees got to see Prabhupada. It was so magical. Prabhupada was so accessible. And I really, really seriously believe that he's still very accessible to everybody, not just to Prabhupada disciples, but to everybody who's following him. And because you can see by what people do that they're in relationship with Prabhupada. I think it's really, really important, because we were just kids, we didn't know anything. When people started initiating, they were just in their late 20s after Prabhupada left. So I used to go, Moksha Lakshmi, myself, Ambika, some different ladies. The ladies got to clean Prabhupada's rooms. So we'd often see him when he came back from the temple. And then I started getting a chance to make Prabhupada's breakfast sometimes. The best cooks were more experienced ladies, our elder god sisters. They'd cook the lunch. But I got to cut up the fruits. Prabhupada liked his fruits in individual bowls, not fruit salad. He liked individual fruit preps. So I used to peel the grapes because he didn't want Prabhupada to have to chew the peel. And it was just such a wonderful meditation. And then he'd have his ginger with lemon juice and a few chickpeas soaked overnight, and some Mangalati sweets. And then we get to take it up and put it on Prabhupada's desk. And I really wanted to make something different, something else, but I couldn't think what to make. So I made this something that you would not give Prabhupada for breakfast. Now I know. So it was one thing I knew how to make was cauliflower with a white sauce, which you'd usually have for lunch, wouldn't you? So I made that, and I was in Prabhupada's kitchen, and he used to sit on his own, very sober, eating his offering. His chowki was against the wall in the bedroom, and it was next to the little veranda from the bedroom to the kitchen. So then if he wanted more of something, he would call. So he called me and he wanted more cauliflower with the white sauce, which was so kind. When I think of it now, what he usually had, So my whole program was to get as near to Prabhupada as often as possible. I think we all felt like that. But some people, I don't know why, but some of us knew, it was common knowledge that Prabhupada was giving darshan in the evening in his room to guests. All kinds of people came. A lot of the film stars came who lived in Juhu, and they were so respectful to Prabhupada. It wasn't like we were trying to get the Film Stars Association and we had to get near film stars. They were coming to see our spiritual master, and they were really, really respectful. They knew Prabhupada was the real thing. And because they knew that, they were really, really nice to us. And so then I used to get in there every night, and Prabhupada would, just little things. They give them fruit, give them prasad. So I had to cut the fruit up and give them prasad and close the blinds, just little things. So I felt like I just wanted to somehow be Prabhupada's servant, and so whatever chance there was. So then, after cutting the breakfast one day, the usual cooks like Arundhati, Palika, Kishori, some of Prabhupada's men servants, they weren't here. So they needed someone to cook the lunch, and Prabhupada asked me, tell her to come over. He was just going to do his letters and get a massage. So I went over and he said, do you want to cook the lunch? And at that time, I wasn't very good at making dal or chapatis. So I just said, oh, Srila Prabhupada, I'm not expert at dal and chapatis. So he said, well, then you shouldn't, if you're not expert, you shouldn't make. So then a few days later, I was taking up any chance to get in there. I used to take the boga up for the lunch. I'd take up the things for the fruit offering, and then eventually I started doing the afternoon fruit offering, which was only a piece of fruit. It wasn't a big offering. And then, so that evening, no one showed up to do the evening offering. Prabhupada used to fry things at night, and he liked portals and, fried things and puris. So I had taken the boga up, but nobody was there. And then, what's his name? Navyogendra Maharaj came running in, and he said, no one's turned up to cook this offering. And he said he'd do some, and I should make a sabji. And I was thinking, I can't do that. Prabhupada just told me I shouldn't cook if I'm not expert. So I remembered a nice sabji one of my older god sisters taught me, Nandarani. And so I cooked that. And in those days, it was so nice, because anything an older god brother or god sister taught you, even you became really good friends later, you still always had that special respect that person trained you up. And I think it's such an important principle that that there's some kind of parampara of people who train you. So that's a big learning. And I never forgot those god sisters or god brothers. So anyway, then Navyogendra took the offering into Prabhupada, and then he came out and he said, what's your name? And I was scared. I thought, oh no, I'm in trouble, because Prabhupada told me not to cook if I wasn't expert. And I told my name, and he said, oh, Prabhupada wanted to know who cooked the sabji. It was very nice. I got off the hook. And another time, am I saying too many things? I don't want to go on too long. Another time, I came up with Prabhupada liked green guava, and he liked to peel it himself. He didn't peel that for him. And I was always watching his servants and what they did, and I was praying I could be his body servant in my next life. So I knew that, I brought the garland up, I brought a drink up, sugar cane, I think. And the servant put sandalwood on, and I knew all the things they did. So again, nobody showed up. The servant was, I think, shopping in Santa Cruz or something, and he didn't come. So I ran next door to Prabhupada's rooms were the sannyasi quarters. And I was shouting, Haribo, is anyone there? Because Prabhupada was ringing his bell, he woke up and no one came. So I had to go in, and I went in with, I thought I better take the things in. So I took the garland in. I didn't know what I should do or not do, but Prabhupada indicated, So I put it on, and I offered all the things that I don't want to say too much in case people say you shouldn't have done that, but I offered all the things they usually offered, and then I gave him I put on the chandan, and I gave him the fruit. And then I asked if he would like more of the drink, and he said yes. So I ran down to the sugarcane wallah and got more. We were all like going mad to see Prabhupada. Sometimes people think we were like a bit crazy, but I figured out what it was eventually. I read in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, that the spiritual master is the manifestation of the Hladini Shakti, which is the pleasure-giving potency. So that it gives pleasure to Krishna. So I figured we were all so ecstatic because we were in the presence of that divine pleasure, potency of Srila Prabhupada's. And he was firing us up. He was firing us up to want to serve and to preach and do all these things. So that's why you see people jumping up and down, and sometimes you hear tapes and you'll hear Yamuna going, Prabhupada, like that, And people may think that's a bit wild, women screaming. But I think that it was Prabhupada's presence. It was a kind of ecstasy, even though we were neophyte, just to be in the presence of, His divine grace. And then the other most important thing for me, one of the most important things in my life, one was serving Radha Landanishwara, and the other was being here, and Giriraj Maharaj, he wasn't Maharaj then, but he knew that I had a desire to do some preaching, and he found that spark, and he trained me up. Prabhupada trained him that when you go out to preach, you're not just going out to get something off someone. You're going out to give them something. We've got everything. We're giving them something. And so he was, again, that principle of engaging people. You were giving. If a person was a big industrialist, a very wealthy person, they shouldn't give just a few hundred rupees. You should engage them according to their capacity. But how do you do that? It's just by giving. So Maharaj was expert in that, and he was always giving, and always and would send me to give magazines, give prasadam, invite them to come and see the temple, the constructions, so they could maybe donate a room. And of course I was no good at getting any money, but I was good at making friends. By Prabhupada's grace, I got engaged according to my propensity, and Giriraj Maharaj was very, very merciful, and I really owe him big time for giving me a taste for that. And so those were very precious days. And we met all those people. They loved us, and we loved them. It was a relationship. It wasn't just going and trying to get money out of someone. It was a relationship where they loved us because they could see we were devoted to Prabhupada, and we were so impressed with them. These people, they had, we were coming from a background with nothing like that. They had deities in their home. They had Brahmin cooks. That we saw their parents, old people with those L-shaped bead bags, And they were so kind to us. If we went downtown, they'd always ask if we wanted to take a nap in the heat of the day, and they'd give us mango. And so we had an incredible time. And somehow or another, again, older godbrother, very intelligent person, trained up by Prabhupada. And then, he didn't just kind of keep you down because you were younger and he was the expert. It was the real culture is you bring other people up. You're the big person and you keep them down. So I'm very grateful that I got a taste from doing that. And last time Prabhupada came to Mumbai, I think. Oh no, he came on the way back. He came on the way to Rishikesh. I think Moksha Lakshmi was here when he was on the way, because we're staying here together now, so I'm just thinking about that. We decorated Prabhupada's, that's right, we decorated Prabhupada's old room. We cleaned it. The flower wala, he was called Sitaram, he did all these beautiful lily garlands, and the room was so fragrant, it was intoxicating. And then we were waiting for Prabhupada to come. No, it wasn't that time. No, because that time, second to the last time, Prabhupada came, he did come up. And we were looking over the edge of the staircase as he came up to his quarters. And we gradually could see as he came into view, and we saw his beautiful head coming into view and coming up the stairs. And Prabhupada's physical presence was so beautiful. We were all transported. You just imagine a pure devotee who's actually always associating with Krishna, how his body, what kind of luster his body has, and how he looks, like it says in the Gita, how he walks, how he moves, everything. And we were looking over the edge of the veranda and watching his head. But the next time he came, his new quarters were supposed to be ready, and they stopped outside his old quarters, and we were all ready, we cleaned everything, and all the garlands are hanging, and Prabhupada would not go in. He would not go in. He said, take me to my new quarters. And they weren't finished. There was a wind blowing all the way through, and there was still some concrete. They had to clean everything up. And we were running over with the archie tray, running over with everything that it was needed. And Sarabi Maharaj, he was and I think everybody was in a heck of a lot of anxiety, but Prabhupada insisted on going in those new quarters. And I can't remember who did the first arti, but it was like the wind was blowing. We thought that the ghee lamp was going to go out. The wind was blowing through. But Prabhupada, he moved in. That was it. Then shortly after that, the brahmacharis had to leave Bombay. It became a policy. We used to dress the deities, and we were collecting for the new temple, and we were broken-hearted. So some of the girls went back to London. I didn't want to go back to London because Prabhupada was still in India. So I went to Vrindavan. Prabhupada was there. And I was really lucky because I knew how to type from working at the BBC. And so I got a service for the temple president to be the secretary. I also got to type a couple of tapes of Srila Prabhupada's. And I got my own room with a tap, which was a real luxury. And unknown to anybody, especially some of our godbrothers who were getting a bit bossy with us at that time. Wasn't like the early days so much. Unknown to them, we could actually see out onto Prabhupada's back veranda where his bed was at night and where his desk was in the day. So any time, if we were careful, we peeped out, I could see Prabhupada sitting, translating in the daytime. And one time that Lu wind was blowing in Vrindavan, where everybody goes indoors. And, you know, it can make you very sick. And we saw Prabhupada, he carried on, he kept switching the microphone off, then switching it on again. He was just bent on translating. And I think Upendra came running out to try and get him to go in. And then at night time, then a little bit later, Prabhupada was getting more sick. And my friend Vishwadevi and we'd switch the light off in our room, and so no one could see us. And we could peep out, and we could see Prabhupada's lotus body. We could see his head on the pillow. And we see Upendra or Tamal Krishna Maharaj coming out to see if Prabhupada was comfortable. It was very intimate and tender the way they were coming out to see Prabhupada. And they didn't know we were looking. But, you know, we just wanted to know how Prabhupada was, and we were his daughters. We wanted to see him. So we can't get excommunicated for it now, for being naughty. But it wasn't really naughty. It was, you know, we were very innocent because nobody ever could conceive of Prabhupada leaving. We couldn't even believe that. And then Tamal Krishna sent me to Delhi because the Pujari there had left, his visa had run out. So I had to go and look after Radhapata Sarati. They were in Lajpat Nagar then, they weren't in the big temple. And in those days, all the ladies dressed the deities. We dressed the deities here in Bombay, and we did the arti. When Prabhupada came to greet the deity, we did the deity greeting arti, and Prabhupada saw us, you know, and then we offered the articles to him. So it was a different world then. And so I went to Delhi, and then we got this news that Prabhupada was going to leave the planet. And it was like the biggest shock. And I had to go out on life membership, and I was just crying all the time. I couldn't, you know. And then it was a terrible time because we had never ever, we were in a bubble. We never even thought that Prabhupada would go. We were just in like a Vaikuntha bubble. And then, as it happened, about a week later, we got another message that Prabhupada had decided he's going to stay for another 10 years or something. So then I was going out on life membership, and I was telling everyone I met that our spiritual master is going to stay for another 10 years. And anyway, then I had to go back to England because I was supposed to get married to the person I'm married to now, but his GBC had told him he had to stay brahmachari. So I went back. I was going to go back to England, but the last time I saw Prabhupada, I went with Bhagavata Shraya Prabhu, who's my husband now, who's a temple president. And he drove out to the airport, and I was sitting in the back, all proper, you know, not sitting in the same car. But then we saw Prabhupada lying in the car, right on the tarmac. The airplane was waiting, and we just saw Prabhupada. We peeped in the car and saw Srila Prabhupada. And that was the last time I saw Srila Prabhupada. And then I had to go to England. I didn't want to stay on my own in India with all this, you know, it wasn't easy anymore. It had changed for the ladies. The ladies were often getting shifted out of temples, and it was a difficult time for the ladies. And so then I went back to England. And I went to Radha Londonishvara's temple, where I joined, and I was, the day that we heard Prabhupada had left, I just came down from the ashram to do the offering for Londonishvara, and I saw my godbrothers, really lovely godbrothers, Ranchor and Bhumadev, and they were all sobbing. And I couldn't figure out what had happened. They were just sobbing. And then they told us that Prabhupada had left. Prabhupada had left the planet. And I had to take the offering up to give to Londonishvara. That was really, really such an incredible shock. And I did the offering, I put the offering there, and then we were taught to worship the deities in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan, not that you are over familiar with the deities, but it was the first time I put my head on Londonishvara's foot, and I prayed to him, please don't let me forget Prabhupada. And then that was the first time I heard Rancho Prabhu has a beautiful voice, and first time I heard them sing Ye Anila Prema Donna for Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada's absolute compassion, and it manifested. I mean, compassion isn't just, okay, it's a quality. It's not just textbook, because everyone's an individual, and every acharya and every devotee is an individual. So Prabhupada, he manifested that in so many different ways. But to me, he was accessible, and that was his mercy. To me personally, I felt I was allowed in his presence, and I feel Prabhupada's presence is still absolutely accessible, and it's there for everybody. And I was looking after, not long after Prabhupada left, I went to Bhaktivedanta Manor, and Prabhupada had recently been there before he went back to India. It was the last journey he made, and some of his personal items were still there, and you could sense Prabhupada's presence. Then I got the good fortune to, with my god sister Vishwadevi and Sri Karma, to try to maintain and upgrade those quarters. But you can still feel Prabhupada's presence there, and it's not because we're Prabhupada's disciples. It's because he is there in his quarters. He said he would remain in his quarters. He would be resident in his quarters, and also because there's a deity there, and that's not just a routine. That's not just textbook. We don't engage in idol worship. Prabhupada is personally present in his deity, and when people come into Prabhupada's presence, they can sense him. And you don't have to be a celebrity, you don't have to be a sannyasi, you don't have to be a Prabhupada disciple to experience Prabhupada's presence in his instructions, in his books, in the deity form. When you offer him a flower, you have a relationship with Prabhupada. He's a siksha for everyone, and you have your Diksha Guru also. And he's the acharya of our movement, and he is there for everyone. And sometimes, once, maybe twice, when I went in Prabhupada's rooms at the manor, because we used to do Prabhupada's laundry and ironing, and I bowed down in Prabhupada's rooms, and I could smell that smell of his cloth, the mustard oil from his body massage, Prabhupada's bodily fragrance, and the mustard oil, and I just thought, he's here in so many different ways, and he's available to all of us. So he's not ever going to be a historical figure. He has a certain, he has that Shakti that Krishna, and Krishna sent him here so we could experience experience the mercy of a pure devotee.